Hello and welcome to today's content of the Porcelain Tower that is coming this Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. So this video is going to be a little bit shorter if possible since there is a new item to talk about, which is the Luminous Armlet, but it's also that there's not enough to talk about at the same time. So I'll try to keep this short just so it's informative. So let's get started. To begin with, the Luminous Armlet stats is at max when it's 5-star awakened level 50. Is HP at 346, attack at 80, defense at 6, magic at 80, spirit at 6. So these stats in general are pretty good, mostly because it's an accessory. It gives you a good amount of HP, but not enough to cover an armor slot. It gives you a good enough attack and magic, but not enough to cover a primary weapon. And it gives you good enough defense and spirit as an accessory, and not enough to cover up basically an armor slot or a defensive option. Most importantly though, and something I have to emphasize on the importance, is the dark resistance and the light resistance it comes when it's maxed. 20% dark resistance and 15% light resistance is no small joke. That is a huge amount of resistance that those two types, when it's equipped on whoever it is and they're fighting fighting a dark or light element, they have to fight through those resistances, and it's so much harder because there's not as many elemental imperils that will be used in these scenarios. So as you can see here, there's also the negative 25% poison and doom resistance. It's mostly for the status elements. It's not as important, and I say this because poison does not instant kill, and doom takes at least 4 turns after it's applied for it to actually work. But if you miss it, then in the first place, even with the negative 25%, then it kind of defeats the purpose. That's why it's not as important. The 20% dark resistance and the 15% light resistance are going to be at 100% uptime. So it's not something you have to worry about on RNG. You will have it, period. So here we are at the meat and potatoes of the video. Basically the usage of the Luminous Armlet. Basically for the most relevant light units, especially once we have Yuna come out and El Sorel once EX starts, is going to be Warrior Light, Sakura, Yuna, and El Sorel. As I said, since the armlet gives 20% dark resistance and 15% light resistance, it's extremely good for those resistances, only against the light and dark units specifically. Ideally, you would want Yuna and Sakura, if you want to max damage, would use the Soul of Phasma, but the Light Bracer can be used as them, as a little bit of a more quote-unquote defensive option, because it gives more HP than Soul of Phasma, and it gives you the dark and light resistance, which they are weak to. They are weak to dark, and if you face another light team or they have a ditto counter match, having that Light Bracer will help you win in the end. As I'm saying that, the flexibility is you can only use the Luminous Armlet on light units. Yes, only light units. No other elemental units can use it, only light units. As much as Ramza, Cecil, Engel, and all of them can use it, until they get an EX from they are right now, they're not as relevant compared to these 4 I have on screen once EX comes out, essentially. Similar to that, because the Luminous Armlet is an accessory, it's crazy good in that it gives you elemental resistances, so you can have your Esper and or your armor slot and your vision card to set up differently to help cover up your defenses if you're using a tank. So for example, if I were to use Warrior Light and I wanted to go against dark units and light units, I would probably use, let's see. I would use the Demon Wall Esper for the 25% slash resistance and the, 15% dark resistance, and use the Light Bracer on top of that, and then use the Fenrir vision card or something similar to it, like the Dwayne's vision card for the magic resistance up. And for his armor slot, you could probably use their Bourbonet helmet from the FF14 raid for the pierce resistance, or you could even stack more magic attack resistance if you want. So basically, it's very flexible as an accessory, even though only light units can use it. It can make Warrior Light very, very tanky, but it also could add that little bit of damage because, as we said before, it has 80 attack and 80 magic. It depends how you want to use it. So moving on to the dark units. There's only one unit here that can lower dark resistance. If the enemy team was supposed to get maybe somehow get 100% dark resistance, if you did, then that means only Dwayne can deal damage to that team. with his Rising Twilight Dark Imperil buff. No other Dark unit can do that. As much as getting 100% Dark Resistance is kind of crazy in that you're sacrificing everything to build that up and then anyone else can hurt you, only Dark units are get hard countered. It's important to note that only Dwayne can lower that Dark Resistance. So building it up in general, if they do not have a conditional like Dwayne, they will have to fight against that mitigation by a large amount. Additionally, as we can see here from the Dark units, only one of these units will get an EX in terms of current right now time in the Japan servers, which is Ziza. Ziza gets her EX so she can go to 120 and she deals a lot more damage, as well as the single target resistance down Imperil that she has. She does not have a Dark Imperil, meaning if you did have a lot of Dark Resistance, she's actually not able to deal a lot of damage as she's supposed to do with her EX. So units like her, Kane, Runestern, Garvel, Venera, all of them will have significantly reduced damage against that Dark Resistance if you were to put the Luminous Armlet on. Sakura, Yuna, El Sorel all take heavy damage from Dark units, including Warrior Light as well, especially from Kane. That Dark Resistance will help immensely in terms of survivability against them. Because Garvel, maybe you don't have like magic resistance, but you have Dark Resistance. Since how defenses work, your magic resistance doesn't have to be as high if you have the Dark Resistance, and vice versa. If you had more magic resistance, specifically against Garvel, you would not need as much Dark Resistance. But because Dark Resistance is specifically element related, it is very hard for the Dark units here that I have shown to be able to deal, like, to be able to pierce through that Dark Resistance basically. And as I said before, only Dwayne has the Dark Resistance Imperil. So it's like, you have to choose very carefully. I think the Luminous Armlet is extremely strong for what it can do, especially if you have one of the 4 users on the light side. Even like Cecil, Ramza, Engelbert, and Thancred, you could make a composition with them and have it work, but these are like the top 4, I would say. They will have a much better chance in surviving and dealing damage against the Dark units. Until the Dark units get like a Darkness Bracelet, or Darkness Ring or something to have like the counteract basically the Luminous Armlet, they will have a significantly harder time fighting light teams basically. So what this means overall as the Luminous Armlet is that Dark teams, they're known for their DPS and like heavy damage, but if you survive them and out sustain them, or basically have a light mage on them with Holy or something, which Sakura and both Yuna can as well. El Sorel does also a lot of damage. They will die. They'll shrivel up and die basically. They can take a lot of damage, but they deal a lot of damage. With this defensive option, Luminous Armlet, against Dark units specifically, it will help immensely survive their firepower, as well as give you a good fighting chance to survive against them and defeat them at the same time. That's why I believe like the usage of the Luminous Armlet is extremely important to get and use. So that's why, if you can, please make sure you do the Porcelain Tower. And as I said before, this is going to be a shorter video since it's only talking about one item and not like a whole topic. We arrived to the end of the video. As always, if you like my ring video, or basically the accessory and like my stance on the equipment on whether you should get it or not from the Porcelain Tower, if you liked it or not, please leave a like and or subscribe and comment if you can, and then I'll try to respond to you if you do. And until the next video, have fun farming for it and peace out.